We're all shopping for essentials online these days, and now you can get rewarded for it. With the Bank of America Customized Cash Rewards credit card, you can choose to earn 3% cash back on online shopping. The essentials have never felt more rewarding. Visit bankofamerica.com/more rewarding to apply now. Copyright 2021, Bank of America Corporation.
You know, it's a common misconception that drinking 8 glasses of water a day is enough for healthy hydration. But sweat consists of water and sodium, which means that you need water plus electrolytes to stay properly hydrated. Thankfully, there are products like Element that have all your electrolyte needs covered. You can try an Element Recharge sample pack by going to drinklmnt.com/Alexi for only the cost of shipping.
Hello, Sunshine. I'm Alexi Lawless, and welcome to the State of the Union podcast, where we look at the beautiful game on and off the field through the lens of red, white, and blue glasses. This week, we'll be talking Gold Cup and Messi and Atlanta and the athlete's mind and Altidore and Descendants and Ted Lasso and valuations and water skiing and so much more. But first, joining me, as always, my friend, my colleague, my guiding light, David Mosse, a soccer savant and a Fox Soccer researcher and writer extraordinaire. Mosse, how are you on this Monday yet again? Monday, July 19th, right? Yeah, Monday, July 19th in the year 2021 as we roll on through this summer of soccer.
I'm doing well. Looking forward to a rare day off this summer, which today is. As soon as we're done taping, I can actually take care of some life stuff that I've been putting off. So that'll be nice.
Well, you deserve to have a little bit of a life, my friend, for all that you do and give us. And yeah, I mean, look, I know you're like me. You love to work. We love what we do, and we're very, very fortunate to do what we do. We had a full week last week, every single day, something that was going on. I love it. Bring it on. I mean, I am in my element when it comes to these tournaments. And as we've said, we went from Copa America right into Gold Cup, and now we're getting the tail end of the group stage of Gold Cup. And we have a strange day off in Gold Cup, and we'll get to that in a second. Are you watching anything, my friend?
This morning, I watched one more episode of Top Boy. I am crawling to the finish line on that show. The true crime doc about the murder that took place in Brazil, that is next on the list. I will definitely figure out a way to watch that sometime in the next few nights. So that's all I got.
Now, when something is in Portuguese, do you watch it in Portuguese, or do you have subtitles, or if it's Portuguese, you just watch in Portuguese, right?
Yeah. Now, how is this one? It's obviously they speak in Portuguese with English subtitles.
Yeah. So you can do two things in some of these things. And I don't know if people have experienced this, but nowadays they're starting to dub in the English language in addition to the actual subtitles. I don't like it because I think you lose even more. So I have the Portuguese going, and then I have the English subtitles, and that's what I did. But there are some that they already have, and I guess they go and get actors to do as close as they possibly can from a translation and act out what the real people are saying, even though it's a documentary. So, all right, let's see. What am I doing? A couple of things. I watched a film called Filmage, the story of Descendants, about this pioneering punk pop band, actually right out of here, right in my backyard here in Southern California, and how important they were from a influential perspective, and how many bands they influenced, especially with that whole punk pop situation that happened through the 90s, and how it wasn't just raw type of music. There was melody behind it, and that was a really, really interesting thing, because I'll be honest, I didn't listen to the Descendants growing up, and I didn't realize how influential they were to so many, and especially when it comes to that genre of music. And then, while it's not something that I've watched, I was, incredibly fortunate to be invited to the Ted Lasso premiere here in Los Angeles. Now, it happened in the same night that the United States played, and so we had to finish our work with the U.S. game, and then we hightailed it over to the after party, which was in Hollywood. And it was fun. It was great, wonderful. And thank you so much to the folks there from Ted Lasso that invited us. For those that don't know, it's starting its second season. It's already actually been picked up for its third season. And for those that have listened any length of time, you know that we started watching it and I started right when it came out, and I was so happy to be able to be there and tell the main architects of this, which is Jason Sudeikis and Brendan Hunt, how much I enjoyed the show, and not just congratulate them because they're both nominated, and the show is nominated for a ridiculous amount of awards and Emmys and all that kind of stuff, but also to explain to them from a soccer perspective. And look, I don't speak for everybody, but I am in the soccer community, and I wanted to make sure they understood that for those of us that have been around a long time, and we talk about being at times sensitive and insecure a little bit, and it comes from at times being made fun of. I loved the heart of the show, and as I said when I was reviewing it for the first time, it was laughing with us as opposed to at us, and I think they appreciated it. It was really fun to talk about how they have gotten into it, and their soccer background or lack of soccer background when it comes to this, but it is a work of art what they are doing, and it's incredibly funny, but it's also has incredible heart, and it can be incredibly moving. And that it's not really about soccer, let's be honest. But they had a lot of soccer people, and a lot of soccer people were at the premiere and at the after party. So I think they recognize how the soccer community has embraced it, and therefore provided an authenticity that they are looking for, when it so very easily could have been just the vignettes that NBC made, where it was much more laughing at as opposed to with. And so that was really interesting to talk to those guys about how they developed the stories and they developed the character. And I like to think that they appreciate it, but who knows? Free drinks and wonderful food. It was a really good time. Mossy, should we light this candle?
Let's do it.
All right. We're going to jump right into the Gold Cup. Like I said, we are getting to the end of the group stage, and from a U.S. men's national team perspective, we'll start off there, if you will. So far, so good in terms of the results, and we know that this Gold Cup, this team that Greg Berhalter has brought to, in many people's eyes, is a B team. I find that offensive and disrespectful, but I completely understand why, relative to the team that features the likes of Christian Pulisic and Weston McKennie and Tyler Adams, people are looking at this as a downgrade. Having said that, 3 games into the tournament, 3 wins. They won their group, which is, let's be honest, expected of the U.S. It's what we do and have always done when it comes to the Gold Cup. I don't think that anybody after this group stage is oohing and aahing about this U.S. team. But I'm not sure that they expected to either. First game against Haiti was a lackluster affair and certainly uninspiring, with getting away with 1-0, although Haiti was a much better opponent than I think people thought they were going to be. Second game against Martinique, 6-1, an expected drubbing of a vastly inferior opponent. And third game, we're recording this on Monday, which happened yesterday, Sunday, a 1-0 win against Canada, in which they scored in the first 20 seconds and then proceeded to hang on for dear life for the next 89 minutes and 40 seconds of the game. There are good things to point to, and there are bad things to point to. I guess, where do you want to start, Mossy, when it comes to these games and the team?
Well, first off, let me say it's been a very good tournament so far. I've been impressed with the level of the non-Mexico and U.S. teams. There's a tendency when those two teams struggle in a CONCACAF game to chalk it up to their failings, but you have to give some credit to the opposition. I've really liked what I've seen in this tournament from Canada, El Salvador, Honduras, Jamaica. It's really got me excited for the octagonal. And also, I love what I've seen from Qatar, which has me thinking already about the World Cup. So, we can get into where the U.S. has gone wrong, but let's give some credit that Canada had a lot to do with that match being difficult yesterday, and also Haiti in the opening game.
Absolutely. And to your point, I think what we are seeing, I mean, we're upwards of close to 60 players that are going to from Major League Soccer that are involved in this tournament, and they're just going to keep going because, by the way, CONCACAF has allowed teams to make changes now when the group stage is over. I just saw, I think, an announcement where Rodolfo Pizarro for Mexico is going to be added to the Mexican national team, another MLS player, and I think we are the architects of maybe sometimes if we were to lose of our demise, but we're also the architects of all of these nations in CONCACAF, 41 members, rising and being better, and that's a good thing. I think that is certainly a feather in the cap of the U.S. But it also means that we are going to face better competition, and so some of the teams that in the past just haven't had the wherewithal and the resources and the talent and the experience to be competitive in this environment are going to start to do better. I mean, we saw El Salvador take Mexico to the brink yesterday, and it was wonderful to see, being coached by my old friend and teammate Hugo Perez. And I'm sure he's very proud of the way that his team played, as he should be, as El Salvador should be. And to your point, the Octagonal, it's coming, and I think some of the traditional notions that we have may be flipped on their head. As I mentioned, the first game against Haiti, there was this collective sigh. I guess it would be a disappointment when the lineup came out and the likes of Jassy Zardes is starting, or Jackson Ewell, because I think that there was a desire from much of the American soccer fan base when it comes to this U.S. team, this particular U.S. team in this tournament, to see as many new faces or inexperienced faces as possible. Now, that then translated into the second game, where it was 6-1 against Martinique, where we started to see a lot of these new faces. Your Daryl Dike starting, your Gianluca Busio starting. These types of players that everybody's really kind of interested in. Eric Williamson, and I think that both in terms of the performance and in terms of the players that were used, there was a much more positive reaction. After that game, I came on air and I was, I'm not grouchy, I'm not grumpy, and I'm not. I think what happens is when you're negative, it resonates much more in that people remember it. Nobody remembers all the positive things that you say, and so when I came on air, I wanted to give perspective and make sure that the way I was feeling about it was that, okay, it's Martinique. And yes, you play the team that's in front of you, but it can give you a false sense of security. And talking about Greg Berhalter, I think what he ultimately did was, I think he devalued the Martinique game in terms of the players that played in it. And I think he maybe raised the value of the Haiti game. And that I think that's actually the right thing to do. And so he melded the two and took what he felt was the best from both of those games and put them together for that third game against Canada. But in doing so, he also changed the formation and showed up with a 3-5-2, which enabled him to get both Daryl Dike and Jassy Zardes on the field at the same time in a forward striker type of capacity. It didn't work, okay? Let's be honest. The U.S., as I said, scored in the first 20 seconds with Shaq Moore. Everybody's going crazy, rightfully so. Everybody thinks this is going to be great. And then they proceeded, as I said, to either forget how to play or just completely capitulate and absorb pressure. They didn't create another chance, a clear-cut chance through the game. And I don't think that the formation worked in terms of having two players up top, three in the back, and the five in the midfield. I also don't think that the personnel, the DK and the Zardes tandem necessarily is in a 3-5-2 is something that worked. Someone like Gianluca Busio, who came out smelling like a rose against Martinique, then in this game against Canada was nowhere to be found. And he's young and he's inexperienced, and these things are going to happen. So ultimately, after the Canada game, I came on air and I said this was a very poor performance, but a very good result in that they won the group, they avoid Mexico, and they did what we expect of them in terms of the results. But how those results came, if you care, how those results came about, I think is going to give you pause and going to give you concern that this group right now can find a way to the final and or win the Gold Cup. How's that for a synopsis, Mossy?
I agree with everything you said. It's a oddly constructed roster because there are no real out-and-out wingers. So he's either asking guys who are more center forwards like Joaquini and Hoppy and Zardes to play off DK, or putting somebody that's more of a playmaker like Christian Roldan or Sebastian Lletget in those roles. So that's limiting his options a little bit. But yeah, I would say the big winners of this group stage have been James Sands, who in that hybrid center back holding midfielder role, I think is really impressed. Shaq Moore, who wasn't even supposed to start. Reggie Cannon gets hurt. He steps in. He's played very well. Sam Vines, I think, has also done a nice job. He got the winner against Haiti, and Shaq Moore gets the winner after just 20 seconds against Canada, fastest goal in U.S. history. Matt Turner, whenever he's been called upon, I think has done well. So there have been some positives. But yeah, Buzio and DK, it's been a bit of a roller coaster because coming off that Martinique game, everybody was lauding them. They're the second comings. And then it was really sort of a come back down to earth situation against Canada. Buzio, we're sort of learning that playing him in one of those deeper central midfield positions against a weaker team where you're dominating possession, he gets to just spray passes around. That works. But against a team that's going to come at you, and then, he really doesn't provide that sort of physical presence that you need in the center of the park. And DK likewise, he can sort of bully weaker teams, but in certain games where he did get exposed a little bit, his hold-up play still needs some work, that first touch, so which is fine. I mean, they're both very young players. They're undoubtedly talented, great potential, and it's good that we're seeing some of the flaws that they can work on now moving forward.
And look, you can, as a good teams at times can play poorly and win, and that is something that good teams have in their arsenal. But you can't make a habit of it. This type of performance, if the U.S. shows up like this in a quarterfinal type of game, I think it's going to be problematic. What I think Greg Berhalter is going to do now is, because the U.S. is so good, even this U.S. team is so good, it gave him the freedom and the ability to experiment. Okay, you experimented in the group stage. You didn't get dinged for it. You got all the wins that you needed, and you won the group. Now is the time to stop experimenting, okay? Whatever information you gleaned from that group phase, you use it to put the best collection of 11 players on the field in this quarterfinal match. That's going to give your team the best chance of winning. And I don't know ultimately what that is going to look like. And when I think about this team right now, all right, you mentioned a couple of players. I agree with a lot of the people that you pointed to. I actually think before Walker Zimmerman went down, and we don't know what's going to happen, I think he continued to impress. I thought that who was in the back? Robinson, right? I thought he was really, really good, especially one-on-one. And at times he was strung out, and I think was really good, right? It was Robinson next to Zimmerman right there with Sands, right? In the back three?
Yep.
And, the back three was interesting because while Greg Berhalter has played a back three, back five, whatever you want to call it, at times, predominantly this team plays a back four. And that for me is, again, the experimentation that's happening. So going forward here, whatever this team is best in, if you believe it's best in the back three, okay, but put them in give them the best chance of succeeding individually and collectively as a team when it comes to who they're going to play. I was really impressed with Canada, and I shouldn't be, because they continue to prove that this is I guess it's a golden generation. I mean, keep in mind, Canada has not qualified for a World Cup since 1986, but the way that they control the ball, the ability to win the ball back, and I guess the inability of this U.S. team to find any sense of rhythm against Canada. The only thing that was missing was the goal. And I don't think it would have surprised anybody had Canada found a way to score against the U.S. So that's the bad news for the U.S. Good news is they bent through the entire game, but they didn't break, and they got that result. But I think that they have to really look at this game closely going forward. We don't know who they are going to face ultimately in this next qualifying in the quarterfinals here, which are what, July 25th? Is that right, Mossy?
The U.S. will play July 25th. Yeah,
okay. U.S. will play July 25th. We don't know what's going to happen. You mentioned Busio, and he regardless of what happens here in this Gold Cup, it sounds like that he has a very exciting future ahead of him, because rumors flying around that the deal is already done when it comes to him going to Serie A, going to newly promoted Venezia out there in Venice to play in Serie A. And the numbers that are being thrown out in terms of the transfer fee are upwards of in the $10 million to $12 million range. And this is now going to be paired also with the Tanner Tessman signing also to Venezia. So automatically, from a broadcast perspective, you're going to want to watch Venezia when they play this year. And for them, it's going to be about staying up. This is a team that has come up from Serie C, and their whole goal this year is to stay up. The interesting thing, we were talking about this Mo and I on the set the other day. The amount of money between these two players that has been spent to buy Tanner Tessman and Buzio, if it proves to be true, I'm saying, with the way that Tajon Buchanan is playing, you might want to spend that money on Tajon Buchanan from Canada, because this guy, he just keeps getting better and better and better. And for those that watch him at New England, you know what he's all about. We watched him with the Olympic, the Canadian Olympic team, and now he's continuing to shine with this Canadian team. And once again, in the same way that I talked about El Salvador in the Octagonal, now with Canada in the Octagonal, some of those traditional views of teams might change very, very quickly if this Canadian team, and by the way, they're missing players. I know the U.S. is missing players, but Canada's missing players too, in Jonathan David and Alphonso Davies. So good stuff when it comes to Canada. So congratulations, I guess, in a losing effort to the U.S., but congratulations nonetheless, because I do think that our optimism about this Canada team is warranted.
Let the record show, you like to make fun of me for being pompous in the way I pronounce certain words. You just said Serie C.
Did I? Well, I feel like I'm pretty much Italian. Okay?
But no, I actually was about to go. I was about to say what you just said, which is I kept thinking about the Octagonal and looking at the Canada lineups in these three games and the way they played, and then imagining plugging in Alphonso Davies and Jonathan David in there. So yeah, they are going to be a force. And keep in mind, that's the U.S.'s first home game in the Octagonal, September 5th in Nashville on FS1. Although the El Salvador game 3 days earlier, which is slated to be an away game, could end up being in the United States as well. So stay tuned on that.
I mean, not that necessarily is going to mean that it's going to hurt their chances of having a home field advantage. I mean, what we have seen over the years from an El Salvador community in D.C. and what we saw last night in Dallas, where El Salvador took on Mexico, and it was an El Salvador crowd. There was blue everywhere. So, and if they end up not playing down in San Salvador and they play in the U.S., there's plenty of places where I think they can get a really, really good crowd and make it difficult, especially because this is a much better El Salvador team than we have seen in the past. You mentioned Qatar a little bit, so let's take a little jump around some other teams here. Let's start with Qatar, the invited guests here, and as I've said, if you are an invited guest to a tournament, you are being invited for a reason, and one of the reasons is to make the tournament better. And I think, without a doubt, Qatar has come in and has made this tournament better. They're an exciting team. They score goals. I feel much more confident that this is a team that is going to be worthwhile when it comes to next November and when they are hosting. And keep in mind, this is a team that they all play domestically in the Qatar League. Yes, they've had some different loans here and there, but this is a team that plays all domestically. And when you look at players like Akram Afif and Ali and Haydos and these types of players, it's really, really interesting. And remember in Copa America we kind of had the people's team of the Vino Tinto for Venezuela. Qatar is much better than Venezuela. Don't get me wrong, but I think a lot of people are pleasantly surprised by this Qatar team. Anything to say about Qatar, my friend?
Akram Afif, my new favorite player, walks into the Brazil midfield, especially if it includes Fred, which I
asked you the other day if you would rather have Fred or Akram Afif. I mean, he's been really good.
And I actually just got a tweet from somebody saying, "Boy, you're really hard on Fred. Does he owe you money or something?" But no, I've been really impressed by Qatar. It's, and look, putting aside all the controversy surrounding that nation hosting a World Cup, it's really got me excited for them as a host team for that tournament, because they are such a fun team to watch. I kind of knew it already. I mean, the way they played in the Asian Cup in 2019 when they won that, and also they were invited guests at the 2019 Copa America. And although they went out in the group stage, they gave a good account of themselves in all three games. Everybody came away from that tournament impressed, but they're really showing it again here. Yeah, you mentioned it. Al Haydos, Akram Afif, Almoez Ali, the striker up there, who had an incredible miss, must be said, against Grenada, but then came back and scored in the same game. Very, very high on this team, and they've definitely added a lot to this tournament. I'm hoping they advance to the knockout stage. They could potentially face Mexico in the quarterfinals, depending on how things go, and that would be a very, very fun game.
Well, when I'm looking at the I guess the hierarchy of this tournament right now, I still have Mexico. They haven't looked great, but they are a slow burn, and they're still Mexico. I still have them as the favorites. I still have the U.S. next. Then it gets really interesting because then you're in your, and I would put Qatar, Canada, Honduras area. U.S. is either going to play against Costa Rica or Jamaica. I think that this U.S. team is much better suited to playing against Costa Rica because I think we match up better with them, and I don't think that this Costa Rica team is very, very good, and I think the Jamaica team would give us more problems. But it remains to be seen who the U.S. is going to match up. What are your thoughts on El Tri? We saw them eke out a 1-0 win against El Salvador last night, and not Tata Martino. I mean, he's getting the results, and they win the group again, but not in emphatic fashion.
Yeah, not overly impressed at all. The Chucky Lozano injury, and we must say it's been a real bummer that we lost Alphonso Davies on the eve of the tournament, and then Chucky Lozano 10 minutes into the first game, probably the two biggest stars and best players from the original squads that were announced. So I think his absence and also the one of Andres Guardado has sort of narrowed the gap between Mexico and everybody else. It went from being an A- team to a little bit more of a B+-ish team. Keep in mind, there are also players that could have been at the Gold Cup that are instead at the Olympics, like Diego Lainez, who scored against the U.S. in that Nations League final, Charlie Rodriguez, Cesar Montes, Ochoa's there as an overage player. So I agree with you. They're the best team. Gun to my head, I would pick them to win this Gold Cup. But I don't think, we already made this mistake in another tournament this summer of identifying a team early on as being the clear-cut best team. And you were a bit overly bullish on that with Brazil in the Copa America, despite all the evidence that they were very beatable. And we saw what happened at the end. And I get a little bit of that sense with Mexico. They are the favorites, but to me, this team looks highly beatable. And we'll see how the knockout stage goes. I do like what I've seen from Rogelio Funes Mori. So they have found something there. Now, Raul Jimenez has returned to training with Wolves. So that's great news. So we'll see if he can get back to his old form. And then if Raul Jimenez returns to his previous form, then he's the starter there. No doubt about it. But Rogelio Funes Mori, I think, has shown that he can be a very useful player for Mexico moving forward.
Really? You like that Funes Mori, huh?
But I thought that performance against Guatemala was really nice. Not just the 2 goals, but he had that back heel and in the second half to set up another chance. You doesn't do much for you?
Well, I mean, maybe because in a strange way, and maybe it's because I have Chicharito on the mind, he reminds me of Chicharito in the way he plays. And maybe that's by design. Maybe that's kind of what they were looking for, or maybe they feel it's just a better version of Chicharito. And look, I know Chicharito has plenty of his faults, but I don't see him as anything different or better than what Chicharito would be. And that for me would have been the reason to bring in, whether it's Funes Mori or anybody else, that you have a better version of Chicharito. And I'm not buying it yet. I think he's a good player. I'm not yet certain that he is a great player.
If Raul Jimenez returns to his previous form and sure, Chicharito keeps doing what he's doing for the Galaxy, you would, if you were the Mexico coach, a major tournament coming up, you would bring Jimenez and Chicharito as your 2 center forwards.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not completely ruling out Funes Mori. I'm just not sold on him yet. And like we said, this is still Mexico, so things are going to continue on and they're going to ramp up as we go along. All right, anything else Gold Cup related before we move on, Mossy?
No, that's it.
All right. Well, as I said, the quarterfinals will be happening this week. We're going to finish up the group stage. There's this. People have asked me why we have Monday off. I don't know, but the group stage actually finishes up. We're recording on Monday. Finishes up on Tuesday, and then we'll know where and who everybody is playing. But once again, the U.S. and Mexico kind of did their job, and certainly from a broadcast perspective, if the soccer gods smile upon us, we can get that U.S.-Mexico final in Las Vegas. But whether it's Qatar or El Salvador or anybody else, there's a lot of soccer to be played and a lot of twists and turns probably before that happens. All right, let's quickly switch over to MLS because that rolls along as we are in this summer of soccer. Josie Altidore, Moss, you remember him? I don't know if you've heard of him or remember him.
Absolutely, back on the score sheet.
All right. So Chris Armas, the former coach of Toronto FC, he was fired, didn't even complete the year, and actually didn't even coach a game in Toronto because, as we know, the Canadian teams up until this, this week, have been down in either Florida or in Utah. He and that organization shut out Josie Altidore. Then they fire Armas. Josie Altidore is back, and not only does he come back, but he comes back and he scores a goal. Who knows if he's back? All right. Who knows ultimately what the whole brouhaha was about? But when you have a designated player that you are counting on to score goals, it's not good when he can't even train with the team. That is a problem because you only have so many designated players and you're paying them usually a lot of money. And so this was not a good scene. And obviously with the change in coach or the firing of the coach, we don't know who ultimately is going to take it, to come in on a full-time basis. Josie Altidore is back in the family, back in the fold, and scoring. So congratulations to him. When it comes to the firing of coaches, though, and I probably buried the lead here when it comes to Major League Soccer. Gabriel Heinze, right? We hardly knew you, my friend. You came and went, and it was not good. 16 games, is that what it is, Mossy? I think we're around there.
If you count CCL, I think it's 17, and then it was 13 MLS, just 2 wins in 13 MLS games.
Okay. Where to start on this? So, first off, speaking of designated players that are being left out in the cold, we come to find out over the last week that Joseph Martinez, who didn't play in Copa America, but we knew was getting back to fitness and shape, we come to find out that he is fine from a physical perspective, but it is a coaching choice to not just not have him playing, but he's not even training with the team. Again, there's this this phenomenon of sending high-profile players off to train on their own for whatever disciplinary reason that may be. So that was one thing that we found out about what's going on with Gabriel Heinze. Then yesterday, as we were all coming on air, news broke that they have parted ways. They have gone their separate ways, whatever you want to call it, firing, sacking. Ultimately, he is no longer the coach of Atlanta United. And, this is how big clubs operate, okay? They don't wait around. They don't worry about having to pay people off if it is not working, and it was not working, for whatever reason, either just pure scoreboard type of situation or behind the scenes, which we seem to be finding out as it trickles out over the last 24 hours that there's a whole lot more going on. You make the change. And I was really interested to see the reaction to this. And I think what it does highlight is how big Atlanta has become, not just for Atlanta. We know how relevant it is within that market, but also how big it's become for the league in the attention that this garnered and the people that were not just watching the car crash, but taking incredible glee, either publicly or privately, in seeing this team that was once this great thing and this super club flame out and melt down once again. And it's normal. I mean, we like to see big, bold, powerful things fail. It's just kind of human nature. Whether we do it publicly or not, it's something that human beings do. And I think it shows that they are still a big club, but they have to do some things and some drastic things right now in order to get back to being that big club from a competitive side. And they got a long way to go. And this is a poor reflection on the leadership when it comes to Darren Eales and Carlos Bocanegra. Now 2 bad hires, if you will. And look, you do your due diligence and you trust whatever that due diligence is, that it's going to hedge your bets and give you the best possible chance of success. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. But, again, these are individuals that are living off of a very, very successful period of time. And it remains to be seen whether that was just the stars aligning or that was by design, because they have not been able to replicate it. And as a matter of fact, the decisions that they have made, in many other cases, they would be gone and they would have cleaned house. now because of these failures and these very, very public failures and the lack of success, or the lack of the ability to continue that success that started out and established this team and made it so relevant going forward. Mossy, what do you think? Why do you think that this went so bad?
Well, our new Fox Sports colleague, Doug McIntyre, wrote a bit of an expose on all the behind-the-scenes issues at Atlanta United. And apparently Heinze was denying the players CBA-mandated days off, also limiting the amount of water they could drink during preseason practices, none of which surprises me, by the way, because there were other clubs like Palmeiras in Brazil who were interested in Gabriel Heinze and were scared off by his sort of dictatorial personality, and he tends to be a difficult guy to get along with, who clashes with players and front office, and so he did have that reputation going in, and it played out exactly as some people feared. I mean, he has some talents as a coach. He did some interesting things tactically in some of these games, but he's just got to improve that part of it. You got to be able to get along with players and front office better than he does if he's going to have a successful coaching career. So, yeah, I wasn't all that surprised that this played out the way it did.
You got to know that going in. I mean, then your due diligence sucked. Okay, if you didn't know that was going to be the case, and the minute that starts happening, okay, Carlos Bocanegra and Darren Eales and the leadership over there, you got to nip that in the bud. You got to make sure that doesn't happen. And how does that kind of stuff, how is that even allowed to happen? Are you just so terrified and scared of your coach that you're not going to say anything? That you don't just cut that off at the pass the first time that anything like that even remotely comes to be? Nah, come on. I'm not buying that at all. So, but I think that this is the right thing to do. If this person was, not giving you the results that you need and causing real problems behind the scenes, then yeah, you have to make a change. But the same people that thought that it was a good idea to hire him in the first place are now charged with making yet another hire. And I'll be really, really interested to see, one, if they continue, and two, if they continue, is this the last chance? And ultimately, who do they decide they want? Because while we can giggle and laugh and point and mock from the outside and take, in a certain sense, like I said, a glee in big teams faltering. The reality is that MLS is better with a strong Atlanta. A strong Atlanta makes Major League Soccer better and makes all of the other teams better. It's not a good thing for Atlanta, which has burst on the scene, which sells a boatload of tickets, which is incredibly relevant, which has created an atmosphere that many, many people point to, and it is sold in terms of what that market and that environment game day is. It's not a good thing. It's not a good thing for Atlanta, and they're going to have to right that ship really, really quickly. And I'm not sure that either they have the ability to, and I'm talking about the ability, just the practical ability at their disposal in terms of money and changes and all that kind of stuff, or necessarily the wherewithal, because it certainly hasn't proven it over the last couple of hires. So we'll see, because they're on our air.
I'm sorry, you want to promote that game first?
No, I'm just saying that we get to see them this week. So we're going to find out what this new Atlanta looks like this week.
Well, so another big name foreign coach flames out. And I know I make this point a lot, but it's worth revisiting. If you look at these Supporters Shield standings right now, the top five are Brian Schmetzer, Bruce Arena, Peter Vermes, Greg Vanny, and Jim Curtin. And, that's sort of gotten in my head a little bit because Expansion Charlotte recently announced that they hired this Spaniard, Miguel Angel Ramirez, as their first coach, a guy who I love. I remain bullishly high on him. He just had a bad experience with Internacional in Brazil, but I read nothing into that. Any innovative coach with ideas that take time to implement on the training ground shouldn't be judged by anything that happens in Brazil. It's amazing to me that type of coach even goes to Brazil to manage. But so I'm still super high on this guy. I think he's one of the most promising young managers in world football. So I was going to fire off a tweet and say, great hire by Charlotte. This guy is going to be phenomenal. But then I thought, well, the track record of these types of guys in MLS actually isn't that great. So maybe I won't go there yet. But so, yeah, I mean, again, we're sort of having these conversations. I mean, I know Tata Martino is the one exception, but generally speaking, Matias Almeida, I mean, his translator's getting sent off in games now. I don't know what the heck's going on there. So there is something to the fact that these big name foreign managers tend to struggle a little bit in this league.
Look, we talk about this all the time on the pod. The desire to appear global and international and cosmopolitan in the things that you do, how you name your team, the way your stadium looks, your aesthetic from a brand, all those different things, and what you are, the players that you are recruiting, the coaching staff that you are recruiting, the methods in which you're recruiting, your training, all of that kind of stuff. There is a real desire that to be international and cosmopolitan, like I said, because we still equate that with being authentic and genuine. And there's absolutely some things where that is right. But to your point, this is such a strange and unique animal. Not just Major League Soccer, but American soccer. And I do believe that having not just a knowledge and experience, but a natural and historic respect for what is happening, and for all of these, these very strange and unique aspects of the game. I think that is valuable, and I think oftentimes it is neglected, ignored, or just completely devalued. And I think at your own peril. And once again, it doesn't mean that you can't have incredible minds and personalities that come in from the outside and bring things in from the outside. But I think you have to balance it and augment it with people that understand the realities and the day in and day out realities of what this league is, and maybe most importantly, I guess, what this league isn't. And I think, to your point, a lot of teams think they're going to go their own way, and they're going to ignore any type of influence or experience or history or case studies or best practices, because they got it and they're going to do something different, and they're going to, recreate the wheel or make a better wheel or whatever it is, wherever it is. And it doesn't necessarily work that way for the most part, not always. So we'll see. We said, okay, they went South American with Tata and went big, right? And it worked out, great guns. Then they went completely the opposite direction with De Boer. And then I thought that there was, this kind of return, especially with the recruiting process and the messaging with Heinze. Now where do they go? I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen down there, but I'm here for it. And all of the angst and the controversy and the drama that this creates, once again, in a strange way, it just shows how big and powerful Atlanta has become, that so many people care. Because I'll be honest, there's a lot of teams, if this were to happen, it wouldn't even be on the radar. People wouldn't care. But because it's Atlanta and because of how big they have gotten in their initial success, it does matter. All right, a bunch of other stuff here, MLS-wise. Mukhtar over there for Nashville, fastest MLS hat trick in history. And this is good. Why? Well, one, a home team wins in front of the crowd, but this is also a Nashville team that, has not been known for a high-scoring and exciting and entertaining brand of soccer. So this was wonderful to see there. Minnesota, by the way, congratulations to the Loons. They did something that so many others couldn't do, which was break the Sounders' record streak of being undefeated in Major League Soccer. And with the parity and the manufactured parity that exists in Major League Soccer, being undefeated for any length of time is a feat in of itself. And that the Sounders did it for so long, congratulations to them, and then congratulations to Minnesota for finding a way to beat what is the best team in Major League Soccer. Anything on those before we move on, Mossy?
Well, no, I mean, we were recently talking about Bob Bradley being in some trouble with LAFC, but they're playing better. They beat RSL Carlos Vela with a great winner. And so they've shot up to fifth. They're only 3 points behind the Galaxy in the standings. So LAFC finally getting going this season, huh?
Well, I mean, so in essence, you're giving him and that team credit for actually living up to who they are, right? I mean, because it was never a question of, they're just bad because they don't have good players. It was a question of these good players are just not playing well. And so, and once again, this is not me saying that they shouldn't be looked at and they shouldn't be that we shouldn't celebrate something like this, but this is, for a lot of people, one of the elite teams in the league. And so when they actually start playing like one of the elite teams in the league, should we be that surprised? I guess we should, given what they have done this year, but well done. I guess they get a pat on the back. And once again, like Atlanta, this is good for the league. LAFC being good is good for here in the city that we live, with Los Angeles, both Los Angeles, the Galaxy and LAFC being good. That's a good thing for the league, and that's a good thing for our city. What else?
And then I feel like we buried the lead here. Brenner with 2 goals for Cincinnati in a wild 5-4 loss to Montreal. Disappointed they didn't get the result, but nevertheless, their record signing. He had scored from the penalty spot, so these are his first 2 from the run of play. So I was happy and relieved to see that.
If you had to predict right now where Brenner is in 2 years, where would you say?
Back in Brazil.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard, Mossy, because you're judged oftentimes by your surroundings and the circumstances, and being able to separate out a player, especially in a league like MLS, that we just talked about with the parity, it's difficult. So, I mean, but look, he was hired to score goals, right? So that's what he did. And so congratulations to him. So we'll see if this changes the perception, either from an MLS perspective or from potential suitors out there going forward. Let's see. What else? Portland. That was a fun scene up there with the first time, obviously, in a long time where the stadium was able to be packed. So the folks up there in Portland got to scream and yell and get a win up there against FC Dallas, which struggles on the road.
Ibobasi with a late goal in that one.
That was a nice goal. Yeah. And the place went crazy, and you could feel a kind of release for, I mean, everywhere that we're seeing crowds, you feel that, and it's wonderful to see. And I'm still jealous sitting on the other side and watching it through a screen, whether it's watching what's going on up in a Portland game, for example, or what was happening in Dallas with Mexico and El Salvador, or the game before that with Panama, before that night with Panama and Honduras. I mean, some of these scenes, we've missed them, obviously, and we haven't had them in so long that when you see them, you are immediately reminded of how awesome it is. And we're going to talk a little bit more about crowds and crowd noises later on in the show. What else, Mossy?
Bill Parcells has a famous saying, "You are what your record is." But NYCFC are testing that this season, because they might be a team that's much better than their record. They lose 2-1 to Columbus, a game in which they had over 60% possession, outshot Columbus 21-6. And I feel like they've had a zillion of those games this season in which they've clearly been the better team and yet have found a way to lose. I know Ian Joy is very frustrated by that. So they're languishing down in 7th in the East, but they've actually played some of the best football I've seen in MLS this season. So hopefully those breaks start going their way and they start winning some of these games.
But you know that this is Major League Soccer, right? And so you can get hot and squeak into the playoffs. And so this would be your typical team where you're sleeping on them because of their record during the regular season, and they are sneaky good. I don't think people are sleeping on them. I think, to your point, I think a lot of people are looking and saying, why isn't this translating into more results? And sometimes it's nothing that you're doing other than fate, kismet, destiny, soccer gods, whatever you want to call. I think a lot of, if you polled all of the coaches in Major League Soccer about what NYCFC is, I think you'd have a lot of people being very, very positive about what this team is and worried about facing them, given what their record says and what the reality is when you actually are playing this team. So I wouldn't be I wouldn't be too worried about it. We know MLS, for better or worse, it's a very forgiving regular season as long as you get into the playoffs. And if you're a good team, that reboot that you get when you get into the playoffs sometimes can wash away what happened during the year. All right, anything else MLS-wise, Mossy?
That's it.
All right, we're going to take a real quick break, and when we come back, we'll be talking about, what else? Messi. Don't go anywhere.
You decided to upgrade your outdoor deck, so you ordered the essentials: a power washer, a set of patio chairs, and a shiny new grill. And you used your Bank of America customized cash rewards credit card, choosing to earn 3% cash back on online shopping and up to 5.25% as a preferred rewards member, which you put toward your most essential deck addition, a bird feeder. Apply for yours at bankofamerica.com/more rewarding. Copyright 2021, Bank of America Corporation.
Support for this podcast comes from Invent Together. According to studies, less than 13% of all inventors who hold a U.S. patent are women. Black and Hispanic college graduates patent at half the rate of their white counterparts. But we can fix that by increasing participation in innovation and patenting by underrepresented groups. It would quadruple the number of American inventors and increase annual GDP by almost $1 trillion. Invent Together is a coalition of organizations, companies, universities, and concerned citizens committed to ensuring that everyone has the opportunity to invent and patent. Because the more diverse the American patent system gets, the stronger and more successful our nation will become. What can you do to help diverse inventors patent and unleash economic opportunity? Find out at inventtogether.org. Learn more and take action today.
All right, welcome back. Oh, yeah, Messi. I mean, the gift that just keeps on giving in terms of content, right? Mossy, did you see that Messi also broke a record while he's having this summer when it comes to Instagram? So for those that don't know, I think there was a Kardashian Instagram that is the all-time most liked on Instagram, right? But when it comes to a sports situation, person, whatever, Messi evidently broke the record for the most liked picture of all time on Instagram. By the way, it was Kardashian, and then somebody put up a picture of an egg, evidently, and people were just so angry that the Kardashian one was the highest ever that just out of spite, they made the egg one the most viewed ever. But when it comes to sports, Messi has yet another record, breaking Ronaldo's record, which I'm sure makes him feel great. And if you've seen this picture, it's him sitting in front, or standing, squatting, kneeling in front of the Copa America, finally winning his Copa America. It's a pretty, okay picture. It's not anything great, but what we attach to it is where the greatness and where I think all of the clicks come. And so congratulations, Messi, from a social media perspective of making history and breaking not only breaking the record, like we said, breaking Ronaldo's record, which while Messi is very private and doesn't boast much, I'm sure deep down this makes him feel pretty good. More Messi, though, and much more important stuff, let's be honest. It's done, right? He's signed. Yes? No? I mean, is this done?
Well, he's decided he wants to re-sign with Barcelona. They want him back. They've agreed on a 5-year contract. So you think, okay, that's it, right? Well, it's not that simple. Barcelona have massive financial issues right now, and Spain has some very strict financial fair play rules, and Barcelona right now are not in compliance of that. And the La Liga president, Javier Tebas, said he is not going to bend the rules at all to accommodate this Messi contract. So they have to figure out a way to get this deal done in such a way where they're in compliance with those financial fair play rules. It's very difficult. And mind you, it would have been easier if this was a situation where they were re-signing or signing a contract extension. But instead, because they allowed the previous contract to run out and for him to become a free agent, now this is like signing a new player, and the rules are even more strict when it comes to that. So Barcelona, as of now, they've agreed all these deals with Aguero, with Memphis Depay, with Eric Garcia, and Messi, and they actually haven't been able to register any of these players, and so they're scrambling to figure out a way to get some of these salaries off the books. For some of the lesser players, they're just looking to rescind their contracts, like Pjanic and Umtiti. For others, like Coutinho and Griezmann, they're actually trying to figure out a deal to unload them. There's been some talk about Griezmann going back to Atletico Madrid. And by the way, Serginho Dest has even got caught up in this the last couple of days because Bayern Munich are sniffing around. They sense that Barcelona might be so desperate to unload some contracts that they might have to sell Serginho Dest. Remember, Bayern wanted to sign Serginho Dest last year and lost out on him to Barcelona. So now they're seeing if perhaps they can end up with him. So it's a crazy situation. I know we've all been programmed as fans when we hear the word financial fair play to kind of roll our eyes and think, okay, if push comes to shove, that's not really going to come to anything. But with each passing day here, you start to wonder if this is a real issue, if they can even figure out a way to fit this Messi contract, which, by the way, he's already agreed to take a big discount from his previous deal. So he's doing all he can to accommodate the situation, but it's still not enough.
I mean, there's a simple solution to this, Mossy, okay? You get David Beckham and the ownership over there at Inter Miami to figure this out, okay? With their incredible knowledge and wisdom when it comes to how to do something like this. Okay, so if it ends up being 5 years, that puts him at 39 going on 40. And so immediately folks that have, harbored hopes and dreams of seeing him one day play here in the United States for an MLS club say, that might be a little much. Who knows? You never know. And who knows if it ends up playing out. I think what this ultimately says or confirms, because it's nothing new, this notion, is that this is a player who has grown up in the cocoon, in the incubator, in the warmth, in the protection of one club. And it is where he feels most comfortable. And I think that going anyplace else, I shouldn't say scares him, but I just don't think that it holds any real interest. I think this is what he has wanted to do all along. And I think that deep down he recognizes that this environment, at times dysfunctional, admittedly, but this environment still is the best place for him and his family, let's be honest. And I think that this is a reflection of that, whether it's the pay cut or the length of time that this contract is going to be. This is going to be a player that will forever be associated with Barcelona. And that's a wonderful thing. That's a wonderful thing for him and a wonderful thing for Barcelona. But I will say, and I know I was joking around about Inter, there are ways that Messi is going to be made whole, shall we say. There are ways going forward, especially in the long term when he stops kicking the ball, that Messi is going to be able to make up whatever he is forgiving or giving back when it comes to a deal right now. And he is and will continue to be an icon for this club and for the sport. And I'm happy. While I do fantasize about what it would look like to see him put on another jersey in this day and age where we know it's so rare. It is kind of cool, and there is a romantic part to what he evidently is going to do. Once again, it's not a done deal, but it looks like it's going to be if they figure out how to work this. But what is going to be ultimately around him when he gets on the field, and does he care? Because at his core, he is a competitor, and he has been incredibly successful. And if in order to accommodate him, you're completely decimating the team that's around him, by the way, a team that I think he also feels Xavi is going to be a part of in the very near future. So I think he's also thinking about these next couple of years, very much so.
And it's interesting you say that. All the guys I mentioned they're trying to unload are guys they kind of sort of want to get rid of anyway. It will be interesting if this Messi situation rises to the level where they have to start getting rid of guys that are important players moving forward, like Ter Stegen or Frankie de Jong, or God forbid, a Pedri or an Ansu Fati. That's when it becomes a real problem. They'll do it because ultimately they want to keep Messi at any cost, but they would love to do it without having to get rid of anybody that's a core guy moving forward. And it is the one thing they have in their favor is that Dembele, Coutinho, and Griezmann were all bought by the previous president, Bartomeu. And so as long as he was in charge, there was some sentiment to either try to make it work with those players, or if they were going to get rid of him, try to get a decent amount back, because that president didn't want the embarrassment of people being able to say, boy, you paid this much for this guy and sold him for that much. Now there's a new president in Laporta, and so he doesn't care as much about that because they weren't his signings. So he's willing to unload those guys for less just to get their contracts off the books. And if anybody wants to hit him over the head over, boy, you paid this much, he can say, well, it wasn't me. I wouldn't have signed those guys. I certainly wouldn't have given him that much money. And so he can plausibly say that. And so they might be able to make something work with Coutinho and Griezmann. Dembele, this injury he picked up at the Euros is problematic. He's going to be out several months, and there were teams like Manchester United that were interested, but now everybody's going to wait and see how he looks. So they're probably going to have Dembele on the team for another season. But I suspect before the summer's out that Coutinho and Griezmann will be on other teams. Griezmann, there's been this talk about a swap deal with Atletico for Saul, and Coutinho, it looks like, I think, will end up back in the Premier League with somebody will be willing to pay somewhere in the neighborhood of 20, 25 million euros. And I think at this point, Barcelona would just take that and cut their losses with him.
All right. Well, speaking of transfers, I know there's still a lot of stuff that's going on and that is going to happen as we get through this summer. And I know you wanted to hit on some at least the really, really high profile and interesting ones.
Well, PSG has been the most active team this summer. They've made a lot of moves. They picked up Jorginho Wijnaldum, actually stole him from Barcelona, who thought they had to deal with him. They signed Jorginho Wijnaldum on a free. They signed Sergio Ramos on a free. They signed Donnarumma on a free. And by the way, I keep saying free. They gave these guys pretty big contracts, so a free transfer isn't exactly free. The one guy they paid a big transfer fee for was Achraf Hakimi, who they signed from Inter. All good moves, really improved that team. They're looking like a real force for the Champions League this season. This might be the year finally. However, this is all occurring against the backdrop of the Mbappe situation. He has told them he is not going to sign an extension. He has one more year left. And yet it doesn't sound like they're going to adopt a philosophy of, we might as well get something for him this summer. They're going to hold on to him and exhaust every effort to change his mind, to convince him to resign, which might mean losing him for free next summer. I suppose the one club that could withstand that is PSG. So it's going to be fascinating to see how that plays out. I think he does have his heart set on going to Real Madrid, although I wouldn't completely rule out Liverpool, but Real Madrid certainly the favorites there to eventually end up with Mbappe. What are your thoughts on Sergio Ramos going to PSG? Might that be the kind of player that can finally instill that sort of DNA that's been lacking in that team and maybe get him over the hump in the Champions League?
Yeah. I mean, I still think that Sergio Ramos has plenty of fuel left in the tank. And I think he remains motivated to do something. And look, when he tells you to do something, you do it. And that type of leadership and that type of intensity. And I know at times he's on the edge. At times he's had to learn to control it. But I feel like it's just what the doctor ordered. I like it.
And on the Donnarumma situation, look, it's yet again very harsh on Keylor Navas. But I will say what PSG are doing here feels less egregious than what Real Madrid did a couple of years ago. First off, while Keylor Navas has been very good with PSG, he hasn't won 3 Champions League titles. He doesn't have the currency of PSG that he had at Real Madrid. And also, Real Madrid bought a goalkeeper at a more advanced age in Thibaut Courtois. They paid a big transfer fee for him. So it's a little bit different than what's happened here. PSG, this is just an incredible market opportunity that arose to get a kid who's 22 years old, who's going to be the best goalkeeper in the world for the next decade on a free transfer, while Navas is 34. So it's a little bit awkward. It's a bit harsh, but it's not completely ridiculous. You can kind of see why PSG are making this move.
Yeah, I mean, the framing of Navas as this Rodney Dangerfield type of character. I mean, don't cry for Mr. Navas. He's going to be just fine. Don't you worry. I think he would probably tell us the same thing.
And then, there's been this little center back merry-go-round because, I just mentioned, so it began with Upamecano going from Leipzig to Bayern Munich. So Jesse Marsch will have to do without him this upcoming season. And David Alaba went from Bayern to Real Madrid. And Real Madrid, it looks like, are going to lose. Obviously, they've lost Sergio Ramos and Rafael Varane, who it looks like is going to go to Manchester United. So that's been kind of an interesting little center back merry-go-round. And Manchester United, let's go there next. It looks like they're going to complete deals here in the next few days for Jadon Sancho and Rafael Varane. So they're looking to make a real move here. We'll see what City and Chelsea do. do the rest of the summer. The City have been linked with Harry Kane and Grealish, and Chelsea are trying to get a center forward. First it was Haaland, and now I've even been hearing Lewandowski. So we'll have to wait and see what those two teams do, because they came out of last season looking like the class of English football. But Manchester United at least trying to make a move there to get up into that upper tier. Huh?
So wait, these are the horrible American owners that are getting Varane and Sancho. I just want to make sure these are the same team and same ownership that we're talking about, right? That are going to spend all of this money and go and get these two wonderful players to improve their product.
And then another American-owned team, Liverpool, they signed Konate, the other center back from Leipzig. So Jesse Marsch is going to have to rebuild that back line next season. So yeah, it's been, because of these international tournaments, players kind of wanted to focus on that. So it hasn't been a crazy amount of activity yet, but there's been some interesting stuff that's happened, and I think the next few weeks will be very crazy as well.
Let me finish it up here, because for that, the Jadon Sancho thing is fascinating to me. The pathway that he took and how his stardom has been built, because it is the road less traveled for an English player. So now he's returning. He's not necessarily returning a conquering hero, but he's certainly returning with a popularity completely different than when he left. How do you see it going? Because sometimes that returning doesn't always go the way that you plan, and maybe you don't. The grass is not always greener, is what I'm saying.
I am an unabashed Jadon Sancho fan. I understand your concerns, but I think he's going to do great. I think this is a phenomenal move, and I'm salivating over the prospect of Sancho and Rashford and Greenwood. So, I think it's a great signing for Manchester. He came up with the City youth system, became disenchanted there, left to go to Germany. So it's even more fascinating that he's now chosen to go back, same city but other club, Manchester United. So he's going to have a point to prove, for any of those Manchester derbies.
A part of me also wants it to show that there are different pathways, and that if you are a young English player, you don't have to be myopic. You don't have to just simply be focusing on. And I know it's the most popular league in the world, and some would argue the greatest league in the world. But there are other options, and I think from an English perspective, you want as many different potential options out there as possible for your developing talent. And if you just ignore or don't pay any attention to something like the Bundesliga, I don't think you're necessarily doing yourself or your development any type of favor. So I'll be excited too to see what that happens. Anything else, Mossy?
And then last one, and then we'll move on.
Okay.
Atletico Madrid signed Rodrigo de Paul from Udinese, which is a phenomenal move. We just watched him have a man of the match performance in the Copa America final for Argentina against Brazil, including the contentious assist to Di Maria, which you and Ali Wagner are still arguing about. But perfect Simeone player, great move for them. And we'll see if they end up getting Antoine Griezmann back. They had De Paul. If Griezmann, we know he struggled to adapt to Barcelona, but putting him back at Atletico, if he becomes a player he was with them, boy, Atletico all of a sudden making some really nice moves here. So we'll keep an eye on that.
That'll be fun to see them. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, time for Ask Alexi. Don't go anywhere.
This episode is brought to you by HP Instant Ink. No one is reading your mind, but HP Instant Ink knows when your printer is running low and sends you new cartridges, so you never have to think about ink. Save up to 50%. You'll pay less than $5 a month for ink and never run out again. Find out if your printer is eligible and enroll today at hpinstantink.com. Conditions apply. For details, visit hp.com/instantink Spotify.
All right, we're back, and it's time for Ask Alexi. Keep in mind, we do have our hotline now up and working, and people leaving messages. Actually, we got 3 of them this week. We got more than that, but we're going to use 3 this week. 657-549-2297. That's 657-549-2297. Mossy, who should we listen to first?
We go in order here. Is it Charles?
Charles, I think. And I think he's from Massachusetts, that is. So let's see what Charles has to say.
Hi, Alexi and Mossy. This is Charles in Massachusetts. And my question today actually comes with a bit of a backstory. As we all saw in the Euro final, Raheem Sterling is taken down in the box for a penalty. Whether or not that was a penalty is a different question. But for the sake of this one, Harry Kane steps up and Kasper Schmeichel does great to make a save, and obviously the ball rebounds back to Harry Kane, and he has a very easy tap in for the goal. And so my question is, what are your thoughts on changing the rule so that the penalty taker can never score from their own rebound? Because it seems